Ladies and gentlemen, we are living in an
unprecedented
time where your individual liberties are being handed over in the name of a government safety net or for the common good. You're tired of being told what you're allowed to say, how to live your life, or how to raise your kids, and so are we. We are the Break the Bell podcast, and we believe your voice is your most powerful weapon. Join us weekly as we invade your ear holes with all the insanity that's going on in the world and expose the corrupt system that is hell-bent on keeping the power from you. You can check out Break the Bell every Monday night, streaming live on YouTube, or listen wherever you can find podcasts. Check out Break the Bell, and most importantly, never stop talking.
This episode will be completely taken out of context. Welcome to the Fact Check This podcast.
All right, Fact Check This podcast. And today I invited Mark back to join me since we're going to be talking about banning books. Whatever, same difference in today's climate. And since we've had this conversation about books in the past, it seemed only appropriate that if I was going to be talking about books, I should have Mark back on. Mark, how's your day going?
It's not going too bad. The worst part of my day was just 5 minutes ago when I was trying to enter the stream, and I did, and then all of a sudden my computer collapsed on me, and you missed a perfect opportunity to screenshot a nice little pic for our episode here.
And a word of advice for anybody recording an episode or recording an interview: hit record early. That way you catch
right at the beginning.
That way, before the guest even shows up for the stream, just go ahead and hit record. That way you get all of the comedic gold on the front end before they realize that it's being recorded. And that's the nice thing about StreamYard is StreamYard doesn't tell you that I'm recording. It just lets it happen. Whereas if we were doing this on Zoom, it would tell you that we're being recorded. All right, so today we are going to talk about this lovely article from USA Today, but it's only for USA Today subscribers, so I've got it pulled up via Yahoo to circumvent the rules and regulations of paying a subscription on stuff.
A common thing that we do on our shows.
Which will not land us in jail because Yahoo is the one who paid for this instead of us, and now we just have to deal with Yahoo's advertisements. Which, tell us about your experience with it wasn't Yahoo, it was you had the original link from MSN. Tell us about your experience with the advertisements there, Mark, since that was apparently
No, it was the advertisements were were crazy and were in the way too, but it's the first paragraph of the article I clicked on. I think what you're getting at is I clicked on the link for, I think does the author work for this, I don't know what it is, propaganda machine called It Gets Better, or someone who's interviewed in the article works for it. And I clicked on that link, and the very first picture is a woman or a man who appears to be Stacey Abrams. I don't think they're Stacey Abrams. But just picture Stacey Abrams in transition. Either maybe Stacey Abrams was a man and this is the end product we're seeing in Georgia now, or else just imagine her deciding she wants to become a man and what that might look like in that middle period. And that's what I saw first when I clicked on the link, and it was terrifying. Hopefully I laid out a good enough picture for the audience.
Oh, so let's see. It gets better. There we go.
Oh my gosh, it wasn't there.
I can't find the Stacey Abrams anywhere.
No.
That's some crazy hair though.
I promise I'm not making any of this up, but she was there and now she's gone. Thank God. These other people don't look much better though.
All right, so there you go. The It Gets Better project for anybody who's curious.
After I said they don't look better. Okay.
It says it gets better, not they look better.
Oh, okay.
All right, so books are being banned from schools. And see, I really expected this. I was disappointed in this article, honestly.
Yeah, when you sent this over to me, I got about 3 paragraphs in, and I was like, I hope Justin doesn't like this article because I already hate it.
Yeah, so I was expecting this to be more of a legitimate book banning type of an article, especially when you see like books are being banned from school libraries. Here's what that does to students. I thought they were going to talk about like actual uh, historically relevant books that are being banned. Like I'm sure you've seen the thing about Maus, Maus. It's like a graphic novel style book that was being banned in somewhere, some school system in Tennessee was banning it. My son has read it. I've read it whenever he had checked it out from the school library. Like it's really good, and it does a really effective job of kind of explaining the Holocaust and the rise of Nazism and everything in a cartoonish graphic novel way with cats and mice as the characters. And it's an interesting interpretation and adaptation of what happened leading up to like I said, the rise of Nazism and concentration camps and everything, the Holocaust. It does a very good job. So I didn't understand why that was getting banned especially in the state of Tennessee, which is for all intents and purposes pretty conservative of a state. Like I would think that would be. I didn't understand what the reasoning was, and it was something about depiction of violence or something like that. But I mean, how else are you going to teach that type of a history lesson without depicting it or explaining it in some way? So like I thought this was going to go into more of that type of book banning type thing.
Yeah.
And they did not. This is a almost exclusively woke progressive article in pretty much every sense of the word. It talks about the banning. Yeah, go ahead.
No, yeah, I don't know a whole lot about the whole Maus thing. I've never read of it. I never even had heard of it until like that came down last week or so. So I can't speak too much to that. But yeah, this article, like I said, I got like 3 paragraphs in, and I kind of saw maybe what they're attempting here, like with the uptick in censorship and canceling. Obviously, we don't need to get into the Joe Rogan controversy, but with that all like it's at the top of the news cycle right now, I think this article maybe comes out obviously also inspired by the Maus thing, but also as a way for people on the left to go, well, see, the right is banning things too. And of course, like the whole premise of the article is built around LGBT books being banned in schools, or how they were in the past. And the author, or the person that the author is talking about in the article, is talking about how he didn't have access to materials that related to him and whatnot when he was in school, and how that's still something that goes on in schools today. So, like you said, and they do like mention in like one sentence in this article about, oh yeah, and the left does ban books too. Like like they went after Dr. Seuss a few months ago, and it's kind of like that whole like weighty thing where it's like, yeah, the right is banning books that are causing kids to commit suicide in school, and the right is complaining about Dr. Seuss being. So it's a huge like skewed article, of course.
One of the things that kind of rubbed me the wrong way about this article is it keeps on acting like some of these books being banned is the reason that the LGBTQ plus high school students have depression, that they have higher suicide rates, that they have all of these problems and stuff. Like, never mind the very well cataloged mental illness that comes along with most of that community. I don't want to oversimplify it, but like there is pretty rampant mental illness that is a part of that community, and to pretend that schools banning books plays some like significant role in that is absolutely insane. Especially when did you happen to do any like extra research and look at like the books that are being listed as the ones that are being banned from this? Like,
I did not have the stomach.
see, just for the listeners, I forced myself to go and look some of this stuff up, and so like All Boys Aren't Blue, some of these other books that are listed multiple times throughout the article. These are not kids' books. Like they're not intended for high school age. Like if they were deliberately written for high school aged kids, that was a poor marketing choice. Like this is very adult content type stuff, and like the reasoning for a lot of these being removed from high school curriculums and from high school libraries and stuff like that has very little to do, or in most cases nothing to do, with the LGBTQ stuff. It's because of the extremely and excessively graphic nature of what is being talked about in these books. Like that stuff's not for kids. So like that really kind of rubbed me the wrong way, because it's like they're portraying this as some attack on the LGBTQ community, when it's the reason that these are being removed from some of these libraries is because of the extremely graphic nature of the books.
This is like a reaction against the energy that we've been seeing over the country, as far as like parents like not wanting their kids to be propagandized in this kind of garbage. Which, like, I'm not. My very unlibertarian take is like I have like a value hierarchy, right? Like, so if I have a kid that's going to school, I don't want them subject to these books either. So I'm actually like, 2 years ago I wouldn't have said this, but I'm okay with certain things like this being banned from, like, I don't want 6th graders reading like boy on boy graphic sexual scenes, right? This is not good for kids. Like, again, if you turn 18 and this is the shit that you want to get into, then go ahead. But like, there's a difference between kids being subject to this and I don't know what other like Dr. Seuss or whatever.
Right. And like, there were multiple references also throughout this that talked about, oh gosh, that's horrible. Oh, see, I
Voters of Tomorrow.
I have to scroll quick. What was the name of the Beloved? There it is. Did you look at that any?
I was going to. That was the one that kind of caught my eye. I wanted to look into that, but I'm assuming you did.
Yeah, so Beloved is based on a supposedly true story, and I guess there were actually like newspaper clippings from the time when it happened. So it seems to check out fairly well. But a historical event where a slave had escaped into the North during post compromise of 1850, which, if you want to look at the compromises of 1820, 1850, some of these other compromises, I actually did an episode on that several months ago with C.D. McCrae. We went through all of the compromises leading up to the Civil War and had a good conversation about that. But a part of the compromise of 1850 was that any escaped slave who had fled to the North could be reclaimed and had to be taken back to their owner. And so there was a story of this escaped slave who killed her daughter or killed a small child to spare them from having to return to a life of slavery. Mm-hmm. This
is based off of a true story, or this is
right. So Beloved is based on that story, and that story is supposedly true. There are newspaper clippings to corroborate that, but that's also during how much of that is propaganda and how much of that is true at the time that it happened is who knows. I'm not aware that there's anything beyond the newspaper clippings to corroborate the story, but we'll take it at its face value and say that it is true. So Beloved is based on that story, and it talks about that being banned in multiple parts of this article. I have not. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong places. I have not found anything indicating that book has been banned anywhere at any point. So that seems kind of ridiculous. But we do know for a fact that the left has tried to ban Tom Sawyer. They've tried to ban Huckleberry Finn. They have tried to ban To Kill a Mockingbird. They have tried to ban Dr. Seuss books. They have tried to ban a multitude of historical historically good works that are, I don't know, kind of staples of American literature. 1984 has recently been given a trigger warning by, I want to say it was like the London or the United Kingdom has.
What exactly is the trigger warning on this? So some of what you might find in this book will look exactly like what we're going through now, but just know this was fake back then, and it is now.
Yeah, that's effectively what the trigger warning that was put on 1984 was, is that reading this might cause you to feel things. That's kind of the point. Doggone it, I cleaned off my bookshelves in preparation for this move, and now I don't have all of them to just reference back to. But there are a bunch of other books that have been banned or received similar treatment historically, and it's typically not. I guess everybody kind of remembers when Harry Potter got pushed back against in the early 2000s. Well, maybe you don't because you would have been too young.
Was this the whole witchcraft argument?
Yes.
Okay.
So at that time, the extremely religious conservative group of or sect of the Republican Party was all about canceling anything and everything that was anti-religious or that could be perceived as bad in any way. And then that kind of faded out because it was fucking ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And then with the Obama presidency, then you entered the new age of cancellation and everything with the left and their ridiculous extremist canceling anything that was racist or whatever. And that hasn't ended though. That's like you said, we don't want to go into the Rogan thing necessarily, but just look at what's come up here, recently with all of the Rogan episodes that got released or that got removed from Spotify, completely out of context video of just a tirade of Rogan saying the N-word that, if you just listen to that over and over and over again, okay, that sounds bad. But if you actually listen to the context of the story or of the conversations that are being had,
and it's been pointed out. Yeah, it's been pointed out. This has already been pointed out too, but it's important to reiterate that Rogan, these old episodes resurface not because they want to cancel him because he quoted the N-word or said it in a joke or whatever. It's coming out because they don't like what he's putting out in regards to COVID, and racism is the ultimate trump card. So had to go back and find that as a way to discredit Rogan, which kind of goes to show why, certain institutions are able to choose which books can be banned and which ones need not be banned. It definitely goes along with the current political climate that we're in. And maybe there was more of a religious right influence back during the Harry Potter days or whatever. I've never actually read Harry Potter, so I don't know much about much about the truth behind witchcraft. I've heard other people make arguments that there are like deeply Christian themes, but there are some people who wanted to like go after Lord of the Rings at one point because they thought that was anti-Christian when it's actually very Christian themed. And now I think what you're seeing, since it is super Christian themed, and we've got this new TV show coming out, like Lord of the Rings is essentially going to get canceled or reformulated into a more, I guess, woke message from what I've been seeing about the promotional materials coming out for this new show. And then I saw this article on Medium about how no, there definitely is not Christian themes in Lord of the Rings. Like, this was the title of the article. It's like, have you read anything about the actual author of Lord of the Rings? Pretty sure.
Right. Have you ever heard of J.R.R. Tolkien or like read anything about him? Like,
this to me is the worst.
Influence in getting C.S. Lewis to do what C.S. Lewis did. Like,
yeah. This to me is like the worst kind of like worse than book banning is completely re-theming or like reformulating these old classics into things that the original.
You can call it what it is. It's completely bastardizing what it is and what it was and what it was always intended to be. That's
right.
Yeah.
And the people who are right now who are trying to bastardize these classics are also trying to dictate which books are okay to ban and which ones are kind of like, they're being goofy for complaining about that being banned.
Well, like, and typically when you look at like the list of traditionally, historically banned books, none of this LGBTQ stuff really has much to do with the banned book list. Usually it's stuff that has like talking, and I'm talking world over more so than like here in the US. Most of the stuff here in the US that's been banned, at least of the last decade, was stuff that was banned for woke, ridiculous bullshit. Mm-hmm. But like the world over, typically the stuff that gets banned in most countries is stuff that kind of decries the bad intentions or the negative outcomes of communism and the extreme progressive leftist agenda type stuff. Like that's the stuff that typically gets banned the world over, not like the LGBTQ subsect of fiction and just of literature in general is fairly small and insignificant, honestly. I mean, it's not. It is representative of the community as a whole. It is a kind of a small subsect of society. There's like it's.
This is the whole fascism is the ultimate evil. Communism is maybe good in theory, not so great in practice thing. That, I mean, I was taught this in school, and now it's not even. Maybe it's good on paper and not good in practice. Like it's actual. Like, well, it wasn't tried the right way. So if we try communism the correct way, then let's start by shoving it down our kids' throats in every way possible.
That's right. That's all those other guys who played Russian roulette and lost. They were playing the wrong way. Yeah. If you play it the right way, you do not blow your own brains out.
This is true. There was another point I wanted to make, but now I can't remember. You were talking about something that sparked. It'll come back to me.
I looked at a few other things that were like traditionally banned books for a lot of stuff. Like here in the US, things that have been traditionally banned books.
Yeah. Oh, no, I remember what I was going to talk about, but finish your point.
Oh, go ahead. If you got it, hit it.
No, I just think that people have said before that there's like a Europeanization of America. And I think that's kind of like what we're seeing happening in schools, especially, or as far as like materials that kids watch or read or whatever. It was always like in Europe, nudity and like sex scenes for even like younger kids was considered more normal than, I guess, violence or like guns, especially. And where in America, like it was complete opposite, where kids were used to seeing shoot 'em up, cowboys, all this stuff, but like nudity was kind of a like, yeah, we don't show that to our kids. And I think we're seeing the flip now to where obviously guns have been under attack, especially like for kids or everyone really, for quite a long time now. But now we're seeing like a more normalization of like sexual scenes and nudity for kids at even younger ages, which is something that was happening in Europe, not so much over here, but now it's becoming more normalized over here.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it from that perspective. That is, I guess.
And this is why Europe has really like unmanly men. So we got this is my own theory here, but there's got to be some truth behind it.
So like, I guess I never really think about that because my son, we've watched like Deadpool and we watch different stuff and some stuff that is, he's 13. And so we'll watch some things that like, I'll tell him straight up before we watch it. Like, this is more adult themed. Like, we'll watch this together, but this is something that you should never watch by yourself. And like, I'll let you know when stuff is coming so that you can, cause I always watch those ahead of time. Like we watched Invincible, the cartoon series on Amazon Prime that's based off of the comic book series. And so like I watched it first to make sure that there wasn't anything that was going to be too like over the top, because it was one of those things that if I know it's more mature content, but I think it's something that he would enjoy, I watch it first to make sure that it's like going to be okay for him. And so like the Daredevil series that was on Netflix a number of years ago, like we're just now watching that because he was too young for it prior to really now. And even some of it is a little bit, may even still be a little too much for him at times. And we'll take breaks from it and stuff. But like, I try to be responsible with the way that I handle that stuff. And even in that stuff, like if there's like a sex scene or something, like he'll get real squeamish and look away and cover his eyes and like he gets real weird about it. So that it's hilarious, but it kind of makes me not think about that side of things, because I guess most kids probably don't respond to that the way he does, or they're being more normalized to it than what he has been, and so it creates a different reaction. And I don't really think about that, because most of my experience with this stuff is what I do with my kids.
Right. And let's think about like that. I mean, going off of that, let's think about like the context that we're talking about banning or restricting books or movies in schools. I mean, if a parent and their kids, like parents and their kids will sit down and watch 12 Years a Slave, like I would rather that conversation come between the kids and their parents about like what they just watched, as opposed to a teacher putting on 12 Years a Slave and then inserting her own, leftist propagandized opinion as to like what that movie means for her and what it should mean for society and all that. Right.
And so like getting back to
notice how I just made the teacher a woman. Sorry.
Well, I mean, that's not statistically that's not inaccurate. Like getting back to the original article, one of the things that it kind of talks about is that some of these kids who identify as LGBTQ plus don't feel like they have an outlet for literature for their group, and that they're scared to talk to their parents about it and stuff. Like, I don't know. Is that still a thing in today's society?
I mean, all you gotta do is turn on a TV screen, and I don't think that like this is something that's being pervaded among the public, right? Like even like an adult like TV show that most people watch, like where a kid is afraid to come out, like the adult is always made to look, or the parent is always made to look like an idiot if he's not accepting of that person. And this is probably has a hard effect on like most parents around. So I don't think this is a real thing. If it is, it's very, very small minority.
Right. And like the places that they're talking about are in a lot of these articles are not like small local like small town schools and stuff. Like a lot of these are they're talking about like big city type stuff where these things are happening, which is just it just seems asinine to me. Like it feels like this is going to go to some of our morning show stuff, but like the ridiculous push for racism nonstop. Like the demand outweighs the supply to such an extent that it's just manufactured, and that's kind of what this feels like. Like, yeah, like you said, like if you watch literally any television show, it doesn't matter what it is, literally any television show, there are multiple gay characters in every single show, and without fail, the themes are there, and there's a good chance at this point there's a trans character somewhere in the show, like without fail. It just doesn't seem like that the demand or the supply of hatred is keeping up with the demand for it from the mainstream media and the corporate press especially. So they're manufacturing it with stuff like this, with this book banning that completely ignores the real basis for why any of these books are banned to begin with.
Yeah, I wish I had a picture to show you. My niece was looking for, she wanted a Ken for her Barbie. And so my brother, her dad, like brought her out shopping looking for Ken. I don't know if you've seen the modern day Ken.
Ken looks like a pussy.
Yes, there's no way that dude is a dad. There's no way that he made a child with Barbie. Like that dude is married to a dude. And this, and it's not like an attempt by the manufacturers of Barbie and Ken or whatever to make Ken look more modern. Like this is what they're trying to do with some of this like LGBT propaganda in schools. Like they're putting it on the television screen, they're making it into toys. Like I don't remember who said this, but like a more like sexually confused like public is like a more malleable public, and this comes to they're easier to control. Like if we're more confused in these areas of our lives, we're easier to control in other areas of our lives. That sounds kind of I don't know, conspiratorial, but I mean there's something to it.
Yeah, I mean you're right. And yeah, they
like look what groups of people kind of like bought the COVID narrative hook, line, and sinker.
A lot of betas.
Yeah.
Well, and that's like you were saying about the Ken doll. Like that dude's getting friend zoned by Barbie.
Right. He's taking her shopping and he's picking out her clothes for her.
Right. And he's paying for it. And that's Barbie's bitch. That's not Barbie's boyfriend.
Right.
And that's what society expects of us. They don't want us to have our luxurious beards and to be manly men. They want us to be bitch boys and do whatever the feminists tell us we should. So I was going to talk about like some of the other like banned books that I found that are like regularly on lists. Mm-hmm. Like some of them I didn't understand why. Like they are books that I have read, and some of them are like 13 Reasons Why, Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl. A lot of books that deal with like depression and suicide and stuff like that in a really deep and heavy way, and like actually look at like the mental illness side of that. Mm-hmm. A lot of that stuff gets banned, which seems weird. Like why would, especially for if you have high schoolers, like our episode with Carlos, talking about how white kids are so much more likely to be suicidal and stuff like that, like especially high school aged. If this is something that's legitimately going on and legitimately a problem, which statistically it appears as though it is, why don't they allow that stuff in schools? And the obvious answer to anybody who's not completely fucking brainwashed, is because these books deal with very heavy topics in a very structured and analytical type of a fashion. And they bring up these topics where the kids are looking at it, thinking about it, and having serious engagement with these ideas instead of just going to a shrink and then being put on whatever antidepressant is making the pharmacy and the shrink the most money and keeping everybody docile and drugged up for the rest of their fucking lives. Like, you can't actually solve your problems. You need to become a cog in the great pharmaceutical machine and just take your pills and be complacent and compliant.
Yeah. I remember once scrolling a list of banned books. It might have been on Wikipedia. I'm not sure where I found it, but I kind of came to this realization that there is such a thing as the like establishment approved banned book. So they're providing this list thinking that it's okay if people like are privy to it and read one or two of the books on the list, because it's still like not something that they're afraid of people getting their hands on. Whereas there's a list out there where you have banned books that people don't, the establishment doesn't even want people to even like know of. Like this band, like it's sort of like we had a conversation about this in the chat. Like you think of someone like Noam Chomsky, like he's the establishment approved anarchist because he's still going to repeat like mainstream talking points, but he's going to do it in his own almost dead 90-year-old way, reminiscing about the good old days when he used to be an anarchist or whatever. Like people aren't afraid of things that Noam Chomsky has to say, but maybe someone else who can formulate, I don't know, like someone like Rothbard, like he's going to be someone that they want to silence more because he's actually saying things that like mean something to people.
Right. Legitimate analysis and ascertaining what the problem is, and also delivering what potential solutions are. Like those are the ones that don't get any type of and when they do get any type of publicity, it's to label people as domestic terrorists and stuff like that.
Yeah. And some of these banned books are like, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I was gonna say, like, some of the banned books are like, I saw a funny meme, and I wish I was trying to find it, and I can't find it. But it was a meme that said, the actual banned books aren't for sale at your corporately owned bookstore. Like they don't.
Like Amazon's not selling a bundle of banned books.
Right. They don't put them on a table at Barnes and Noble and say banned book. Banned book. These are banned books for sale. Like those aren't actually banned books. I mean, granted, for a handful of those, like Animal Farm, 1984, like some of those have been legitimately banned in other parts of the world, but like those aren't things that are considered as.
Yeah, this is the point I was gonna make. Like sometimes they'll add a book to the banned book list that was banned from like one school in rural like Kansas or whatever. Like it's appropriate everywhere else, but this one school banned it, and maybe they banned it in like 1867 or something. And now the school's allowing it. They didn't actually like go through a process to where it was allowed back. It just showed back up in the school and people are fine with it. And like this goes to the whole like I'm not reading things that I don't know, that I don't see like characters that like look like me. Like, okay, I understand like a black kid in Baltimore like wanting more books that have characters that look like them, right? But if this is like then proceeding to force rural Indiana to put more books that Baltimore has, like this makes no sense. Like this is not this is like the whole egalitarian thing where it's like, well, everyone has to be reading the same stuff, and all the same stuff has to be banned, and everything for everyone. It's like, no, this is not how things should be. Like this goes back to our talk with Carlos. Like certain communities are going to ban certain things and allow other things that other communities won't, and this is okay.
Yeah, and I mean, like I was saying with my kids, like there are certain things that with my son we're not going to watch right now. There are certain things that I'm going to strongly recommend that he not watch or read until he is an adult or, out of my care and is on his own to deal with it. Because there are things that I don't think he should watch or read. And I mean, there are things that I wish I hadn't watched or read, we all you kind of live and learn on some of that stuff. But
there's that test that you always learn in school or in college was put on like white kids or whatever about the white doll and the black doll. I don't know if you remember this. Like, they think it's super enlightening that a white kid is going to choose a white doll. So with the kid, going back to the kid story, like there was the black kid and the white kid, and my niece is white, so she chose the white kid. And people would say, well, this is indicative of like inherent white racism or whatever. Or it could be that she lives in a small town in Indiana where most of the people she sees are white. And this goes to like what books you might find in one library versus another. It kind of depends on the community that surrounds it.
So I don't know how much experience you have with it, but like if you go to a liquor store in a black community, you're going to find a lot different variety of stuff than you find at a liquor store in a more predominantly white community. Same with a gas station. And like a gas station in the hood is probably going to carry a lot more Salems than they do Marlboro Reds. Like, they're just, but all of that gets portrayed as somehow we always end up back on us being racist anytime we do episodes together. But, like anytime you have stuff like that, like there are going to be certain demographic differences. And that's the way schools should be. Like if you have a school community that, like for instance, I don't understand why mouse is something that they would ban in that Tennessee school. Maybe they have their reasons. Maybe in that community they don't want that shown. Maybe they think it's too graphic for and I don't know, I didn't look super deep into it. Like if it's in an elementary school, it's possible that that's a little bit too adult themed for elementary students. I think it was last year, so he would have been in 7th grade was when my son brought it home, and we looked at it and like maybe he's a little too young for that, but he understood the themes of it, he understood the ideas of it, but like he understood that stuff because it's things that I am interested in and talk about, and so he was aware of that type of stuff because he's my son. So maybe in that community they didn't think that was appropriate for kids of that age. I don't know. I didn't look deep enough into that particular situation, but I mean, it should be on a case by case basis. And if there are certain schools that are banning that stuff and the kids know, like if the kids know that it's banned, there are other outlets to find it. There are public libraries. There's Amazon. There are, all kinds of places that you can go for that. So if anything, like if there are kids who have a particular interest in that, the fact that it's banned should drive them somewhere else. It should drive them to a higher level of search and inquiry and looking into it. Like while I don't agree with bans, I don't necessarily think they're a bad thing on a community by community basis, and they could even be a good thing. And like if that's something that kid is actually sincerely interested in, then that gives them a motivation to go look more into it and like find everything they can from that author and like really dig into it, and then be able to provide a reasoning why it's not beneficial for that to be banned. Like don't just cry bigotry.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of, I have this controversial opinion that
no, you don't have controversial opinion.
That like kids cheating in school isn't such a bad thing all the time. Like, of course, if you gotta like if you have a kid like throwing a nerdy kid up against the locker and be like, give me the answer to this test, so that's cheating and cheating. But if he's like cheating in a more like sophisticated and clever way, like he probably will like make it better in the real world than the kid who's following the rules to a T.
All right, so
There's
you're
more.
pretty smart, I assume. I mean, you just from conversations we've had, I know you are pretty smart. Did you engage in a significant amount of cheating?
Oh, I cheated in school. Yeah.
I mean, the smart kids are the ones who cheat. Like,
I think Kiyosaki,
like you have the
Richard
really-
Kiyosaki calls
you
it
have the-
collaboration.
you have the really smart kids who don't cheat, and like they're kind of a drag on everybody else. But
Yeah, the
like,
Dr. Fauci's of the world. Yeah.
right. But the actual smart kids, I cheated like a motherfucker. We like the ones of us who are successful in across any field or like across any field or venture that we've taken on in life, like the ones of us who have made good money and made a real living off of just being smart, we were the cheaters.
I mean, rules are meant to be broken, and those who find a way to break them in like really clever ways are the ones who are going to make it in the world, right?
That's right. I mean, if you never figured out how to program every answer into your graphing calculator, were you even paying attention to all of the programming options that a graphing calculator had?
Now we got to do a whole show on like how we cheated in high school.
Oh man. Did you ever watch that movie Cheaters? Where it was like this group that was like somehow they got the SAT answers, and so they were formulating a way to cheat and like writing answers on sticks of gum and then wrapping the gum back in the foil wrapper, and then so they would take it out, and then if the observer happened to be coming by, then you just pop the gum in your mouth and no one was ever the wiser, or like all kinds of it. I don't know why I even bothered to ask if you had ever seen it. You haven't seen anything. Go look it up. It's a lot of fun. Really good movie.
My very first memory of cheating in school, this is when you first like learn like basic multiplication. I had a pencil that had like 1 times 1 all the way to 10 times 10 like on the pencil. And it had like the answers. It had like the problem and the answer or whatever. And it was like an oral like test. And it was like, okay, what's 5 times 5? And I just had this pencil that I was like discreetly like fiddling with below like like below the desk, like finding the answer really quick. Didn't get caught. It was an exhilarating experience for me. I don't know, how old are you when you first start learning multiplication tables? Like this was
second grade, I think.
Young. Yeah, so I was pretty young.
I had a term paper in high school that was on, I chose the topic of school vouchers. And I was working on writing a paper, and I happened to come across one that basically took my entire view on everything. So I effectively plagiarized it. And like I moved stuff around and changed stuff around and everything. And it wasn't one that was easily available that you would find online, which this was, early 2000s. So my teacher wasn't very computer savvy anyway, so it's not like he was going to. But the problem was that you had to present your paper and give your reasoning for taking the position that you took in class, which most of what the paper ascertained was the same opinions that I had. So like I read through it and made sure that I had good arguments for everything and presented and defended my paper really well. But it was also luckily a topic that literally nobody else in the school had any interest in talking about. So when it came time for like the Q&A portion of my presentation, even our teacher was like, yeah, nobody wants to talk about this. You can just go back to your seat. So the trick is pick such a boring topic that nobody wants to ask you any questions about it. And
there
then,
you go.
And then you just get left alone and you can take your B and move on with life.
Just move on. Yeah, I had a kind of a similar experience at a college, the college debates that they set up, and like the professor gives you the topic that you're supposed to debate, and like in support of or whatever. So I remember the debate was like, should math and science receive like heavier focus in schools than like English and the arts and these other subjects? And I was on the opposed side, like, so everything should receive like the same amount of focus. And the people who wanted, like, who were arguing in favor of math science receiving a heavier focus got up and did their thing. And the only thing that I said in this debate was, I'm not arguing that math and science shouldn't be taught. Like, it should be taught. It just shouldn't receive a heavier focus. So all this stuff that you just went through is a moot point to me, because I agree with it, and we just shouldn't like have a heavier weight on it. And like, that's literally the only thing I said in the debate. And all my like cohorts were going into like these deep analysis and everything, and graphs and charts. And I got my thing back, and the lady's just like, well, that's an A because that was a great sentence. This is why I don't like, I've never like been one to debate. Like, I'm not a huge like debate fan. Like, I'm just going to say my thing and just leave it at that. Apparently the professor liked it.
That's funny. I had a English comp class that you wrote op-eds on everything. Mm-hmm. And so he would give you topic, or like for every day in class, he would put topics up on the board, and he would ask what your opinion was on the topic. And then he would argue the counter to it. That way it was good conversation. Like, mm-hmm. Because it was an 8 a.m. class. So typically nobody else in the class would participate with me. So it would just be me and him like arguing back and forth all class. And whatever position I took, regardless of his personal opinion of it, he would always take the opposite. That way we could, keep the conversation going. And he would actively try to get other people in the class to participate, and they just never would. So, or anytime they would, usually they would take a position opposite of what mine was. And so as soon as I would start in explaining my position and tearing theirs apart, they would just clam up and wouldn't argue. So it was never any fun arguing with the other students, but it was always a lot of fun arguing with him. So we had to do like these big term papers, and it was supposed to be like a minimum 10 pages long, and mine was 6. So when everybody had turned them in, like, he was going around and he would hand them back out. And so we had to do, like, at midterm, we had to turn in like our summary of it. And your summary was supposed to be like 5 to 6 pages long, and mine was 3. And so he waited until like the very end. I was the last one he handed it back to, and he gave me mine. And he said, "This is an F." He said, you wrote 3 pages on what's supposed to be a minimum 5 to 6 pages. He said, like, this should be an F. I gave you a C because what you put in it is good. And I trust that your final paper is going to be excellent. I was like, well, I appreciate that, because like I knew it was an F when I turned it in, but like it is what it is. Like, I couldn't force it to be longer than what it was without just completely spoiling the entirety of the paper that I'm writing. So then when we did the final and I turned it in, it's supposed to be a minimum 10 pages, and mine is 6. He waited until the very end. I was the last one. Like, he would give your paper back and talk to you about it and then let you go. So I was the last one. So I was the last one still in the room. That way nobody else could see that mine was like only this thick when everybody else had these like massive packets that they had turned in. And so he gave my final paper to me, and he said, it's supposed to be a minimum 10 pages. He said, you could not have covered the topic any more effectively with an extra 4 pages. He was like, nothing else that you could have put in this would have been anything more than filler and bullshit. Like, you completely laid out your side of the argument, the other side of the argument, why you're right, why they're wrong. Like, there's nothing else that you could have added to this to get it to 10 pages without it just being filler and bullshit. He was like, so obviously this is an A. Like, I'm not gonna dock you for being pages short when you made a better argument in 6 pages than anybody else in the room made with 10 to 15 pages. So like, there is something to be said for that.
Oh, Justin is muting himself now because his dog is in the background. Apparently angry about the story about Justin getting an A for that paper.
It's the time of day that she decides she needs to bark at nothing. There is literally nothing outside. There is no one outside. It is about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and that's when she loses her shit for no more reason than the sun shine wrong across the yard. I don't know. Like, it is like clockwork. Yeah, I'm looking forward to when we move. I'm hoping once we get moved that whatever it is that happens to flash across, the ghost that runs across the yard at 3 o'clock every afternoon won't be at this new house, and so she won't go into a barking tirade at the exact same time, literally every day.
She strikes me as she wants to bark at the sky, like that Simpson picture of old angry man yells at a cloud.
She would make a good libertarian.
We've come full circle.
Well, I think we'll wrap on that. For anybody who is not aware, we actually have an episode of Los Libertinos with Carlos that is out today, and you should definitely go check that out. Also, Mark and I do a morning show every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday called The Morning After. I'm working on a graphic that hopefully, if not by the time this has come out, by Friday, we will have a new morning show graphic to really put our white supremacy on full display.
Oh, no.
And Mark, give your plugs again. I know anybody who's listened to this show a handful of times has gotten them at least twice, but go ahead and hit it again just for anybody who might be new. Not that I actually pick up new listeners ever, but, you know.
So it's just markmetz.substack.com. It's the emergent newsletter. I haven't posted something in like 2 weeks, and I have this like creeping anxiety within me that I have to get something out there. Experiencing a little bit of a writer's block right now, but hopefully we'll get something out.
That's why I keep bringing it up, trying to push you into doing something.
Yeah, I don't know. This is like a January thing for me. I don't know. It seems like seasonal, where January is like a struggling like writing month for me. I guess we're more in February now, so I got to get out of it.
Yep.
So what's that?
Got to break out of that funk.
Yeah, I'm trying. We'll get there. So yeah, subscribe to that. It's not defunct, I promise. There's still going to be stuff going up on that. And then at Real Mark Metz on Twitter.
And thank you, everybody, for joining me yet again. Be sure to check us out on The Morning After and check us out over on Los Libertinos with Carlos. Hope everybody has a great rest of your day, a great rest of your week, and I will be back on Monday with another episode where I have no idea what I'm going to be talking about, but we will wing it, and I'm sure it'll be fantastic. And if not, feel free to let me know. Thanks.